Welcome to Max's Models. I'm Max. Well, hello, Glue Troopers. Today I got back to work on the little Kopro or KP L4 Grasshopper, basically the Army Piper Cub. And I got the struts on it, again, dealing with very small parts, but everything fit okay. Didn't really have any serious issues with it. Getting the landing gear on was a little bit trickier. It worked out better just to go ahead and file off the little stubs they had and make butt joints and then put the suspension system in between. And if you use a viscous enough glue and you're patient enough, getting it straight was a trick, but I was finally able to do it, and it took some playing with. But the hardest part was just to walk away and let it harden. But I did notice that they tended to want to move just a little bit. So once the glue was semi-dried, I flipped it over and hung it from its wings, and then everything pretty much hardened. It kind of hung straight, and then I was able to I had to get some flash off the wheels, but then I was able to get them on. It was all pretty straightforward stuff. It was just how small everything is that made it tricky. And making sure that the wheels were aligned, and they pretty much are. Once I was convinced everything was straight and that Revell Contacta glue was working pretty good, except when you pull away, it tends to leave that little hair thread. But got everything in there, and then it was time to go ahead and put the actual paint coat over the primer, which I did. And not a lot of decals on this. I decided to go with the pre-war or early war version. I didn't want to put on the 1941 field exercises when I believe it was the big Louisiana maneuvers. I didn't want to put the white crosses on it. I just want to make a fairly generic Cub, although I did put the little kind of squadron marking on it that it had. And when I was done, it actually not too disappointing. Wings seem to, I don't want to use the word sag, but they should be pointed up a little bit. I've got everything in place. The struts and everything are just where they're supposed to be, but the wings seem to angle down just a hair. That's my only real disappointment with it. But that said, it still looks good, and good enough that I decided to go ahead. I'm going to just go ahead and display it in the house for now. It may eventually make its way out to the Tarbis to the 1/72 scale shelf, but for right now, it's in here. And in fact, it resulted in some rearranging on my shelves, and which, what do you know? No breakage. There's a first. But it's done, and it's definitely an advanced builder's kit. The work I did on it was definitely at best mediocre. And I would not recommend this like to a little kid or someone who has issues with the fiddly stuff. But for someone who, has the eyes, hands, and patience and wants a 1/72 scale L4, I can definitely recommend it. It's got adequate detail without going overboard, and it's pretty good looking little product when you're done, and be easy for you to modify if you wanted to. It's pretty straightforward. The next thing I did was, you may recall, I recently said that I wanted to try and see if I could clean up one of those Monogram infantrymen, make him look a little bit better. So I brought the lieutenant in, the commanding officer. One thing I did to make this a little different, partly because I didn't have a proper flesh tone, but also when I was in the infantry, we always went to the field with cam stick on our hands and faces. Any exposed body parts were covered up with camouflage stick. So I decided to put some camouflage on the officer's face and hands. And I filed off some of the seams and things and sanded down the helmet. But I don't have a lot in the way of the proper paints in here, so I just mixed up a couple of colors just to work with. Touched it up and made it look better. Definitely not, completely correct, but I was just running this as a test to see, with a little bit of effort, if this would be if you could make it into a good figure. They're definitely not going to be a threat to Tamiya, but for what they are, you can make something pretty good out of them. You throw on a little camouflage, put them in a diorama, and yeah, they'll work fine. I'll probably, as time goes by, one at a time, touch up each of the members, and then when I get them all done, make some sort of diorama or something. The other thing was, I finally got around to building the trailers and the atomic bombs that came with the Silbervogel, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. I did want to get them built so I could use them for something. I mean, I have to admit, where the Silbervogel is concerned, The vehicles that came with it and the trailers and the bombs are almost more interesting than the actual rocket plane was. They're pretty cool. And for some reason, they give you 2 of the short round bombs, which I guess are supposed to be implosion devices, and just 1 of the big long one, which I assume is supposed to be the gun type. So basically, their version of Fat Man and Little Boy. I could be completely wrong on that. They're actually pretty cool designs. And all I could think was somehow these atomic bombs and trailers and everything, yeah, it's got to have something to do with the Godzilla diorama. I don't know what. Maybe I'll put him up on the Godzilla shelf or something, like have him getting ready to step on one or something. You just can't have too many atomic bombs. So the last thing I did this evening, which wound up eating a lot more time than I expected, was one last look at some of the Bicentennial aircraft kits. Decided to go out and see if I could find some really good photos of Bicentennial military aircraft from 1976, and I found some, not as many as you would think. So I thought I'd do a quick rundown of what I found. Of course, we all know about Hasegawa's F-106, City of Jacksonville, but there were other F-106s that had somewhat less flashy Bicentennial paint jobs on them, and Hasegawa made at least one of those. And there are also decal sheets for some of the others. So there's actually the F-106, the F-14, the F-15 definitely probably had more options on this than anything else. We'll get into that in just a second. But the F-106s, there are a lot of Bicentennial options out there for decal sheets. The one that really surprised me, I didn't even know it existed till I did this, was the Spirit of 76 T-33. This was an Alaskan airplane. It was from the, I believe it was the Alaska Air National Guard, but these were the only 2 photos I could find of it. One is in black and white, one's in color. I didn't even know that thing existed. And yes, they had T-33s in service up through the 1990s, actually. Then there was this Aardvark F-111, which was an interesting half camouflage, half Bicentennial scheme, and Hasegawa does make a kit of that very airplane. Like the F-111 Aardvark, this F-4 was mostly camouflage, but still had some Bicentennial markings, big gaudy ones up on the tail while keeping the rest of it camouflaged. And of course, that's a Hasegawa kit of it. There was the brand new TF-15 Eagle, which some called the F-15B, which later became the F-15E Strike Eagle. It was the second one made, and I believe it's the one that they converted into make the Strike Eagle. I faintly remember it, and I think it was the only F-15 that was painted in the Bicentennial colors. So, of course, Hasegawa did it. The one by Revell is an F-15A, and I think they just made an inaccurate reboxing of a kit they already had, because I don't think any F-15As were painted in the Bicentennial scheme, but I could be wrong. Then, of course, there was this rather well-known A7 Corsair II, and, of course, Hasegawa, once again, makes that very airplane. And it's just an A7D, with the Bicentennial decals, but still, it's cool. There were a series of Navy S2 trackers, and the reason these photos are like this is because some of them were copyrighted and have permission to use them. Hasegawa makes at least one US2 tracker in the Bicentennial markings. And there's also the base airplane, the C-1 Trader, which is essentially the same airplane, except it's a cargo plane instead of being opted for sub-hunting. And I found that there is a company, I believe that's RVHP, that makes that airplane. And there were a lot of these C1s and S2s in various Bicentennial schemes. In fact, the C1 Trader at the Navy Museum, when I found this photo, I don't know if it's still this way, but it was still in its Bicentennial scheme on display at the Navy Museum in Pensacola because it was retired in 1976. So that's kind of cool. There were a bunch of S3 Vikings that had Bicentennial schemes, and Hasegawa makes at least 2 of them. And I think there were some more decal sheets that were available outside of that. There's, of course, the famous VX4 Phantom, which had that. It's probably the closest thing to the Jacksonville F-106 as far as being loud, gaudy, and I think beautiful. And of course, once again, Hasegawa makes the kit of it. And I think it and the Jacksonville F-106 go back and forth for the most beautiful. And there was, of course, an F-14 that was in a bicentennial color. I don't know if it was just one or not, but this airplane's probably the most produced. There are numerous kits of it from both Revell and Hasegawa, and also there were some die casts of it as well. So this one's probably the easiest one to find stuff for. The Marines had an RF-4 called the Spirit of America, and here it is on the USS Midway. And Testers made a kit of it, which was actually the Italeri kit reboxed, but still. Hasegawa made a couple of TA-4J trainers. Hasegawa also makes the bicentennial Navy Sikorsky helicopter, the SH-3. That was pretty cool. I did not expect to find that one. The Navy also had some T-38s that were in these schemes, and JBot Decals makes the decals for that. Now, there were some TA-4Js that were in bicentennial markings that were not kitted as kits, but there are decal packages for them that you can get. I also found an Air Force KC-135 that was a bicentennial paint scheme, and there are decals out on eBay, actually, for that one as well. That one I didn't know about. I did not find anything for the T-37 Tweet, but which was in these markings, but I did find decals for the T-38, the Air Force T-38, for that bicentennial paint scheme. In fact, I think a couple of people might have made them. The Navy had their Spirit of 76 E2 Hawkeye. Again, I didn't find a kit of it, but I did find an aftermarket decal sheet for it. The one that really surprised me was I had never even heard of or seen this bicentennial T-28 Trojan, and sure enough, there was a decal sheet made for it. Not only that, the decal sheet also includes the decals to make the U.S. Army T-28. You guys may remember when I did my video on Army aircraft, I talked about these airplanes. Of course, although a fairly straightforward paint scheme, that little olive drab cheat line is going to make things tricky. Other bicentennial aircraft, such as this EA-6B Prowler, this T-2C Buckeye, and this Navy UH-1, I didn't find kits or decal sets for. They may be out there, but I just didn't find them. And one last parting thought, where that Revell F-15A is considered. I did find some concept artwork of F-15s in Thunderbird markings that were, of course, the way for them to try and get the Thunderbirds. Hey, this is what the plane would look like if you took it instead of the F-16. I don't ever think that was ever going to happen given the cost of operating the aircraft. Plus, I suspect the F-16's probably a better airplane for the Thunderbird mission, but I don't know. Not my forte. Let the Eagle and Viper pilots argue that one. But basically, what they did with the TF-15 was they put it in the proposed Thunderbird markings, but replaced the Thunderbird logo with the bicentennial logo, which frankly I think works and kind of clever. So that's what we have for tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed that little dive into Obscura. You take care of yourselves. We'll talk at you later. And as always, model on.